9 spine-chilling tales of haunted towns revealed by grandparents. True sinister legends exposed. The air crackled with tension as Clara walked into her late grandmother's house. Dust hung like smoke, blurring the memories locked within the walls of the quaint two-story home. Shadows clung to corners, whispering stories of the past, and the faded photographs of family members seemed to gaze upon her with knowing eyes. It was meant to be a fresh start for her and her son, Ben, away from the chaos of city life, and yet, as she proactively unpacked boxes surrounded by sprawling cornfields, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling stirring in her gut. Her grandmother had always been a believer in the unexplainable. There were tales of men who lurked at the edges of town, whose eyes burned with a hunger for the innocent. The Watcher, they'd call him, a figure haunting the nightmares of local children and spinning eerie yarns about vanished kids from the neighboring towns. They said he prowled when the moon hung high, and Clara found herself dismissing these traditions as relics of a more superstitious age until she reopened the chapters of her life in this place. Friendly faces met her as she wandered the familiar streets. A waitress at the diner remembered her name, neighbors waved warmly. They painted the illusion of security, but every smile that split their faces felt a little too wide, a little too forced. Ben played in the park, laughter echoing unnaturally, as whispered fears of the Watcher swept through the children's conversations. Clara brushed it aside with a chuckle. Ghost stories. Nothing more. Yet, as the day waned and the sky bruised with incoming storms, an ominous energy gripped her. That night Clara went out for groceries, the thunder rumbling as coppery raindrops began to fall. She left Ben at home, promising him she'd be back in a flash. The darkness embraced her return, swallowing her whole as she fumbled with the keys. Where was Ben? She glanced around, heart pounding, feeling as if eyes were watching from the windows that gazed out across the cornfields like malevolent sentinels. The clock ticked devilishly slow, every chime echoed louder than expected. Panic surged as she called out, "Ben!" Nothing. Silence hung thick, like fog before a storm. She rushed to the phone to ring the sheriff, a man with a hesitant smile who didn't believe her fears and reassured her, he's probably just playing with the neighbor's dog. But Clara's instincts screamed otherwise. She dug deeper, mining old town records and artifacts until she felt the suffocating truth close in on her. The seemingly tight-knit community held a dark rhythm. Each reassuring smile twisted into something sinister, and she felt the threads of trust unraveling before her eyes. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the winds howled outside, Clara stepped outside against the wet, biting chill. Shadows leered from the sides, whispering her nightmares with every step. She could feel them, her neighbors, their joy felt tainted, like masks hiding something far darker. What truth had she stumbled upon? She must find Ben before it was too late. Just before reaching the edge of town, Clara shuddered. The hairs on the back of her neck stood at attention, dread settled deep in her chest. Every laugh she thought she heard among the children now seemed like the mocking taunts of the Watcher, who surely smiled at her growing terror. Who or what was really watching her from the shadows? Would dawn arrive with the answer, or would night leave her with only haunting echoes of her fate? Clara's heart raced as she reached the deserted park where Ben had been playing only hours before. The swings creaked eerily in the gusting wind, seeming to sway to a sinister rhythm. Her breath came in quick gasps, fogging the night air as she scanned the darkened corners. The moon gleamed through the clouds, illuminating the vast expanse of cornfields surrounding the park, each stalk swaying like shadowy figures whispering secrets. "Ben!" she screamed, her voice tearing through the stillness. The only reply was the rustling of leaves and the distant echoes of her own fear. Panic clawed at her throat as she imagined the unthinkable. Where could he be? She turned, her mind racing back to her conversations with the neighbors. Their words lingered, warnings wrapped in smiles, stories filled with the laughter of children veiling darkness lurking just beneath. Could the Watcher have taken him? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Clara bolted toward the edge of town, where the stories said he lurked. She looked down the shadowed path that led to the woods. The trees stood tall and twisted, their gnarled branches reaching like skeletal fingers into the night sky, beckoning her deeper into darkness. With trembling steps, she ventured forward. The crunch of twigs beneath her feet echoed ominously. She held her breath, squinting into the blackness, praying for a flicker of movement that would signal Ben's presence. Suddenly, a rustle caught her attention. Clara's heart pounded like a war drum as she turned towards it. "Ben." Her voice barely emerged as a whisper, silent, stretched, suffocating and heavy. Just when she thought all hope was lost, a fleeting shadow darted past her. Clara jumped, her instincts kicking in. Without thinking, she dashed toward the movement, adrenaline fueling her. As she sprinted, a woman's voice resonated from behind the trees, sweet yet haunting. "Come back, little one, we have games to play." Clara's chest tightened. She sounded just like the witch from the storybooks her grandmother used to tell. The whispers swept through the woods, growing louder, more frenzied, enticing. It lured the lost, drawing them into a web of despair. "Ben!" She cried again, desperation lacing her shout as she plunged deeper into the woods. Suddenly, she stumbled into a clearing where a circle of children gathered, their faces pale in the silver light. They stood silent, their expressions empty and devoid of joy. Clara's stomach sank, they were not playing at all. "Where's my son?" Clara shouted, fear gripped her heart as she stepped into the circle. The children didn't respond, instead, they turned, eyes widening in horror. Their gazes were not fixed on her but behind, at something lurking beyond the trees. She whirled around. There he was, Ben, standing at the edge of the clearing, his tiny form shrouded in darkness. His eyes, normally filled with laughter, were glazed over, lifeless. His mouth barely moved as he mumbled words she couldn't quite make out. "Ben." Clara's voice reached a fever pitch. She shoved past the children, but they blocked her, their stillness chilling. Whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices rising around her like a storm. "Join us," the children intoned in unison, their voices echoing unnaturally. "What is happening?" Panic surged, ice spreading through her veins. She reached for Ben, but the Watcher stepped from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, eyes glowing with a violent hunger. "Not all are meant to escape," he hissed, a twisted smile curling on his lips. Clara's breath hitched as fear turned to resolve. She could feel Ben slipping further away. She had to break the spell, to pull him back from the abyss. What if the Watcher wanted her too? What if he had already claimed other children, their fates intertwining in this wretched dance? "Let him go!" she shrieked, taking another step forward as the figure loomed closer, cold and menacing, but the deeper question loomed even larger. Would she be strong enough to fight what they had become, trapped in a haunting past? What horrors lingered in this town, waiting to devour her son and her? With everything on the line, the question echoed in the dark forest, promising a terrifying reckoning. What sacrifice would she need to make to save him, if any hope remained? Clara's heart hammered in her chest as she faced the Watcher, dread coiling around her throat like a vice. His smile twisted, a grotesque imitation of kindness, and it felt as if the very air around them thickened, infused with malevolence. "Ben, come back!" she pleaded, her voice breaking, tears stinging her eyes. She lunged forward, desperate to reach her son, but the circle of children closed in around her, their eyes wide and hollow. The whispers grew louder, drowning out her cries, an echo of lost innocence blending with a chorus of despair. "Mommy!" Ben's voice was little more than a soft murmur, words trapped in a haze. His small figure stood unresponsive, held captive by forces beyond her understanding. Clara's breath caught. What had happened to him? "It's too late for him," the Watcher crooned, stepping closer, illuminating the fear painted across Clara's face with the glow of his gaze. He is one of us now. There's no escaping fate. The ground felt unsteady beneath her feet, a dark magic pulsing through the soil, pushing her back, though the longing for her son cried out in defiance. Clara could see Ben's face clearly now, the child she cherished fading before her eyes. I want to let you have him. She charged ahead, shoving past the silent specters that had once been joyful children, yet the closer she got, the more the shadows clawed at her, tendrils of darkness reaching from behind the trees, pulling. It felt like time slowed as Clara grasped at Ben, fingers brushing his arm cold, removed. Panic surged, a primal urge boiled within as she fought against a tide pulling her down. Why don't you join us, Clara? The Watcher's voice was a honeyed poison, persuasive and cruel. So many have succumbed before you. Imagine the peace, the eternal games. No, Ben. She cried, struggling to keep her mind clear. Fight it. Please, fight. As Clara stood there, every muscle in her body screaming for movement, she heard the echoed words, join us, becoming a chilling hymn that wrapped around her heart, dizzying her senses. For a single, terrible moment, the horror of the woods seemed to dissolve into a serene promise. She felt herself swaying, caught in the enticing melody of the children's song, a place where fear was replaced with delight. But she had Ben to think of. Shaking her head violently, she focused on the boy in the shadows, his eyes dimming. Look at me, Ben. Remember our games. For an instant, something flickered behind his vacant stare, recognition. But it was gone in a flash, replaced by the oppressive laughter of the children circling her. Clara recalled the stories, the warnings woven together like a spider's web. What price had others paid to retrieve what was taken? Her thoughts fumbled through the tales of sacrifice, amulets, and desperate bargains. She clenched her jaw, brows furrowing with resolve. Not today. She lunged for Ben's hand, pulling him with all her strength. The whispers grew frantic, the children wavering like reflections in water, as if the very ground trembled at her refusal. But the darkness retaliated with vicious, clawed hands that gripped her ankles. Clara could feel its cold breath on the nape of her neck, threatening to pull her into the abyss. Suddenly, Ben's eyes flickered towards her, a fleeting spark piercing the fog that surrounded him. Mommy! And just like that, everything shifted. Clara grabbed his hand tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks, focusing on the only bond she cared about, the love that transcended the darkness. Then, a blinding light erupted from their hands, a surge of love that pushed against the malevolent force. Let him go. Clara screamed, feeling the pulse of energy course through her, pushing back against the cold tendrils. The Watcher faltered, and with each heartbeat, his grip weakened. But shadows loomed. The forest was not done. They would fight back with everything they had. The moment hung in the air, a painful choice looming ahead. Was this light strong enough? Suddenly, through the din of whispers and chaos, Clara heard a voice that sent chills down her spine. Only one can remain in that moment. She knew that the sacrifices had only just begun. What dark bargain lay ahead to secure their escape? Would she lose him forever in the shadows, or be forced to confront her own fears? With trembling hands, Clara squeezed Ben's, the warmth grounding her amidst the terror of choice. The light flickered, unstable, illuminating the treacherous ground beneath them, where shadows battled for dominance. Clara felt the energy between her and Ben, pure and vibrant, was pushing back the darkness, but the whispers grew to a horrendous crescendo. Only one can remain, echoed ominously, threatening to sink its claws into her heart. She locked eyes with Ben, fighting the urge to look away. We have to leave. Now. But terror gripped her mind, the weight of the choice pressing down like an anvil. What did it mean? Mommy, I don't want to go. Ben's voice trembled, a soft plea that twisted her gut. She couldn't let it end like this. With every ounce of will, she drew him closer, trying to shield him from the suffocating whispers. I want to leave you. You're my son. We will get out together. The Watcher laughed, the sound like cracking ice. There is always a price. One will be lost in the woods. Choose, Clara." His eyes glinted with anticipation, as if drinking in her despair. Clara felt the shadows tighten around her, like a vice squeezing the life from her limbs. "I refuse to choose," she shouted, her voice a thin line of defiance amid the encroaching darkness. But deep down, doubt wormed its way into her heart, gnawing at her resolve. "Join us," the children chimed, their voices eerie and vibrant, each word delicate as lace yet heavy with malice. They drifted closer, their eyes like empty sockets reflecting nothing but the void. She could see their hopes, once potent, twisted and hollow, now reduced to despair. "No!" she screamed, forcing herself to remember the laughter they had shared, the warmth of bedtime stories, the way Ben would curl into her lap seeking comfort. She wouldn't let that memory become a hollow shell, but with every second that passed, their old world slipped further away, the forest pressing in, dense and suffocating like a shroud. Clara gripped Ben's hand tighter, heart racing, each beat a desperate plea for their bond to remain unbroken. She could feel the darkness gnawing at the edges of her mind, blurring her vision and twisting her thoughts. "Only one can remain" became a nightmare painting itself across her consciousness, a lament of despair drawing closer. The watcher stepped forward, his smile widening, twisted with the glee of impending triumph. "What will it be, Clara? Sacrifice one to save the other?" The shadows surged, trying to envelop her, and Clara's heart felt like it might burst. "Not my son. Not Ben." Every nerve in her body screamed in protest as the shadows twined around her, cold tendrils seeking to pull her into the depths of oblivion. She heard a heartbeat, faint but steady, resonating against the hollow drum of her own. It was Ben. "Mommy, please." His voice broke through, cracking her resolve. For a split second, she envisioned a world where she surrendered, where the darkness would claim him, and she would exist in a place where love turned to nothingness, devoid of memory. "No!" she yelled again, but the shadows hissed, the darkness whispering sweet nothings, promising solace, a false utopia where pain would cease. Clara's vision blurred, reality warping under the weight of her fears. In that critical moment, she knew. "Together," she cried. "We fight together. I'll never choose between us." The air shimmered, the light flickering in response to her fierce declaration. For the first time, she felt the full magnitude of their connection. The bond that wouldn't break, wouldn't yield to darkness. But the watcher's eyes blackened with fury, and the air churned violently. "You will regret this choice." With a terrifying shriek, the shadows surged toward them, a storm of blackness seeking to snuff out their light. "Hold on, Ben." Clara felt the warmth radiate through their joined hands, but the shadows clawed with desperation. There was still a price to pay. Just as the darkness threatened to claim them, Clara's mind whirled with fragments of the stories she had clung to. She thought of her own mother, the tales of bargains struck with shadows, the ancestors who fought against eternal woe. What if she didn't have to make a choice at all? With determination swelling within her, she gathered every ounce of strength, her voice becoming a war cry against the shadows, calling for the courage of those lost to the dark. "Get back!" she shouted, stepping forward, ready to confront whatever price loomed ahead. The air changed, thick and charged, and she felt the earth tremble beneath her. Would it be enough? And then she whispered, "I will not lose you." But as the forest roared in response, an unsettling silence fell over them, as if fate held its breath, waiting. What awaited them in that silence? Clara's resolve trembled as darkness swirled and the final choice danced on the cusp of existence, their next step teetering on the edge of nightmare. The darkness writhed and pulsated, a living entity eager to swallow them whole. Clara's heart thundered in her chest, a frantic drumbeat against the chaotic whispers that circled her mind. The air grew heavy, each breath tasting of iron and ash, and she pulled Ben closer, anchoring him against her body. He trembled, and she wished more than anything that she could shield him from this madness. She scanned the growing shadows, feeling their malevolence, like hands reaching out to grab them. "What happens now?" she murmured. The watcher stood tall, the embodiment of her fears, silhouetted against the dim light that flickered erratically. The forest seemed to close around them, trees bending low as if listening to every word, every heartbeat. Shifting figures of children danced in the gloom, their hollow eyes fixed on Clara and Ben. "Join us," they sang, voices sweet yet laced with a bitter edge that sliced through the fabric of her resolve. "Stop it!" she cried, a surge of fury propelling her forward. Each child's face twisted in mockery, echoing laughter that sliced like shards of glass. The watcher's expression mirrored their deception. He thrived on her fear, feeding off her doubt. "Do you not understand?" he intoned, his voice low and mocking. "You're trapped. One must pay the price. It is the law of the woods." "No." Ben's small voice echoed her thoughts. Understanding flickered in Clara's mind like a distant star, like a last vestige of hope. The stories of sacrifice and bargains came flooding back, each passing moment swirled with memories of warnings not to trust a smile from shadows. Just as despair threatened to crack her spirit, Clara stood firm, her jaw clenched. "There has to be another way," she whispered fiercely to the shadows. The watcher leaned in closer, eyes glinting with sinister excitement. "No choice escapes my grasp. You cling to hope, yet the darkness knows your heart. It has claimed many before you." The shadows surged again, creeping closer, but this time, she felt something stir within her, a flicker, a pulse of light. "Ben, hold on tight." And then, the unthinkable happened. A heartbeat echoed through the air, not just Ben's, but a chorus of souls resonating from the woods. Clara's heart synced with theirs, a drumbeat of fear and memory, pain and defiance. Together, she breathed, and in that instant, a brilliant flash lit the ground beneath them. Clara and Ben felt warmth surging at their feet. The shadows recoiled, hissing, drawn back like waves from a gale. What is happening?" Ben gasped, his grip tightening around her hand, eyes wide. "We're breaking the hold." Clara shouted, hope surging through her veins. "Stay with me, Ben." She felt the past intertwining with their present, the lives of others who had faced the Watcher, who had fought the darkness with every ounce of their strength. The Watcher's surprise twisted into fury, and his voice rose in a terrifying roar, ripping through the forest. "You cannot defy me. You will lose everything." The trees shuddered, branches cracking like bones, but Clara wouldn't yield. Drawing on the power of their bond, she focused every ounce of courage, every memory of love, into a blazing shield that radiated outward. "We will not be lost." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled violently, and shadows shrieked as they clawed at the radiant light. The forest no longer felt suffocating, it was alive, a battleground between the forces of darkness and the light they wielded. Yet even as they stood defiant, Clara could feel the weight of something dark lingering in the background, like an unseen predator watching their every move. The shadows may have retreated, but she knew they were not free yet. As the air crackled with energy, they took a step forward, the path pulling them deeper into the unknown. Would the light hold? Or would they plunge into a darkness they could not escape? The ground pulsed underfoot, and a chilling gust of wind swept through the trees, whispering secrets that sent chills skittering down Clara's spine. What awaited them in the heart of the forest? As their footsteps echoed into the suffocating quiet, uncertainty loomed like an all-consuming fog. Would they find allies or traps in the shadows of the woods? The question burned in Clara's mind as they pressed on into the creeping dark, shadows whispering promises of despair. The forest stretched on, twisting and turning like a living maze, branches clawing at the air around them. Clara felt Ben's small hand slip slightly from her grip as another cold gust whirled past. Panic clawed at her throat. "Stay close," she urged, squeezing his hand tighter. Their tiny glow flickered like an old candle, as shadows extended threateningly. They raced deeper into the woods, each step tracing a path toward a truth hidden in the darkness. The churning whispers tangled with the rustling leaves, forming an unsettling symphony of deceit. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps. "What do we do if the light fades?" She wondered aloud, voice trembling. But before Ben could answer, the ground beneath them shifted. A sudden tremor set them off balance, and Clara found herself almost on her knees, gripping Ben tighter. "Hold on!" she shouted, but even her voice felt small amid the forest's indignant roar. A thick mist encroached, creeping up their legs like icy fingers, and Clara barely kept her footing. "Can you see anything?" she asked, straining her eyes against the swirling fog. In the haze, the children's faces lingered, their ghostly grins promising acceptance, a sinister invitation. "Join us." Ben's voice was a thin string of fear, barely able to break through the enveloping darkness. "Not now, Ben!" she snapped, determination cutting through her rising dread. They defaced shadows before, they could confront these as well. But as she scanned their surroundings, a hollow pit of despair settled in her stomach. The light ebbed, dimming like a dying star. "Stay together!" she shouted, trying to choke the rising tremor of panic from her voice. Suddenly, the Watcher emerged from the mist, eyes gleaming with a predatory intensity. "You can't run from what you are, Clara," he taunted, his voice slithering through the air like a serpent. "You're part of this now. It craves your anguish." "Shut up!" Clara yelled back defiantly, her heart racing. "You don't own me." She felt Ben's fingers twitch, a flicker of hope inside her. Then it happened. A whispering wind surged around them, momentarily wrapping them in warmth. Ghostly silhouettes of past victims appeared on the periphery, their eyes heavy with lost stories. Their features were soft yet firm, holding a truth Clara needed to grasp. She leaned into the glow. "We can't let them take us," she declared, voice rising, as the others joined her chorus, together. A cry of rebellion surged through Clara, igniting the spark of light she had felt before. It flared, illuminating the gnarled trees and the shrieking shadows nearby. But then, the Watcher laughed, a haunting echo that bounced off the trees. "You think you're saving yourselves, but you're merely choosing your fate." That laughter seemed to curdle the air as darkness rolled toward them, swallowing the light, pulling it apart like thread unraveling from fabric. Clara grasped Ben's hand tighter. They had fought, they couldn't let this be the end. The tension snapped, and her pulse raced as if it were a marathon she couldn't finish. "We need to push through." She pulled Ben forward, charging at the mass of shadows that twisted around them, but just ahead, the ground gaped open, a swirling abyss yawning hungrily beneath the moonlit veil. Clara froze, the light around her diminishing, flickering like a candle snuffed in the wind. They stood on the very edge of something terrible, something that could swallow them whole. "What now?" Ben asked, eyes wide, the tears glistening in the reflected light. "The heart of this forest," Clara whispered, breath hitching in her throat. "We have to jump." Just then, a feral howl split the air, vibrating through her bones. The ground shook violently beneath them. The shadows writhed in anticipation, ready to consume. "Are you ready?" She pressed on, her heart racing in tandem with the crushing weight of darkness pressing against them. "What if we fall?" Ben asked, terror seeping through his small voice. "Then we fight." As they exchanged a final glance, she saw a flicker of bravery glimmering within him, a spark. Amidst the dread. Together they stood at the edge, the abyss looming, calling their names. Would they leap into the unknown seeking salvation or be devoured by the darkness? The choice loomed, desperate and raw, waiting to be made. And behind them, the Watcher's laughter echoed, menacing and triumphant. Clara knew now that defeat would mean losing more than life, it would mean losing hope itself. Would their bond be strong enough to face what lurked below? The abyss was waiting and time was running out. Clara's heart raced as dread twisted through her like vines tightening around a tree. They stood teetering at the edge of the abyss, the darkness writhing below them like something alive, something hungry. She turned to see the Watcher's shadowy form lingering behind, eyes glinting with malice as if he reveled in their plight. "On three," she murmured, her voice trembling but firm. Ben nodded, his eyes wide but shimmering with determination. 1, 2, 3. Together, they jumped. For a heartbeat, they soared through the air, the world above laced in moonlight, the ground falling away beneath their feet. Clara held her breath, the sensation exhilarating yet terrifying. Time slowed as they fell, and the abyss welcomed them with a chilling gust, its breath cold like death. Then, they hit the surface, a solid thud that sent shocks through their bodies. They landed in a dark chamber that echoed their presence back at them, a vaulted ceiling looming above, dripping with moisture and shadows. Clara pushed herself up, her pulse pounding in her ears, disorientation setting in. Ben! She called, panic rippling through her. The space was dim, only illuminated by the flickering light of their small glow. She spun, frantically searching for him. Where are you? Here. His voice was shaky, muffled against the damp walls. Relief surged through Clara as she stumbled toward him, the sickening fear that had held her in its grip transforming into a fierce protectiveness. Stay close, she warned, gripping Ben's hand tightly. The darkness seemed thicker here, wrapping around her like a shroud, pressing in from all sides. She steeled herself and took a cautious step forward, every crack of the ground beneath them echoing ominously. But as they moved, the air seemed to change, thick with whispers. The walls breathed with hushed secrets, stories woven through time that clung to her skin. What if we're not alone? Ben murmured, a tremor in his voice. Then we'll fight, Clara repeated, remembering their resolve. They had faced the wilding shadows together, and they wouldn't let the darkness consume them now that as they traversed deeper into the chamber, something caught Clara's eye. A faint glow flickered ahead, pulsating like a heartbeat. Look! She pointed, leading Ben toward it. The light revealed what appeared to be a series of carvings etched into the stone, a mural telling a tale of terror. Shadows depicted horrific scenes of families lost in these woods, eyes forever wide in fear. It seemed to dance with malevolence, as though the figures could break free from the stone and drag them into oblivion. Clara! Ben's voice wavered, breaking her reverie. She turned to him, her heart sinking upon seeing his face pale with terror. From behind them, the air grew still, a heavy silence settling in like a thick fog. Clara felt something shift. The darkness was closing in around them, unfurling like a nightmare dragging its talons across reality. The watchers' laughter erupted from the corners of the chamber, echoing, taunting. Foolish children! You think you can hide from the past? The stories never die. They feed on the living, and you have walked straight into their embrace. Clara's heart raced, and her grip on Ben tightened as she pulled him closer. What do we do? He whispered, eyes wide with panic as the laughter intensified, circling them. Find the heart of this darkness, she said, forcefully enough to cover her fear. We need to break it. There has to be a way to end this. Just then, the ground shook again, and a crack split the floor, splitting the chamber wide open. Screams erupted from unseen entities, voices of despair laced with fury. Clara and Ben stumbled back, and she could feel the heat of something terrible blazing below. It was a void, fierce and unending. Jump again? Ben cried, but even as he asked, Clara realized they had no choice. The darkness was rising, tendrils reaching out, ready to consume them whole. No. We fight. Clara yelled, digging her heels into the ground as the warmth of Ben's hand fueled her resolve. But as she steadied herself, the cold laughter echoed louder, resonating with a truth she had somehow missed. The forms of lost souls emerged around them, flickering in and out, their faces twisted in agony. Help us! They cried. Free us! With every heartbeat, the chamber pulsed with life. Darkness was rising, but so was something else. Shadows swirled, intertwining with the lost souls' pleas for liberation. Clara sensed it, and it hooked into her very being. Would they fight against the tide, or would they join the whispers of the damned? They needed to face this head-on before it took everything they had left. Clara took a deep breath, preparing them both for the assault of the unseen horrors. Together. She shouted, her voice drowning out the cacophony, igniting a spark of defiance within them. But the darkness laughed back. Would strength and unity be enough to stand against their terrifying past, or were they destined to become part of the shadows forever? The shadows writhed, swirling around them like the blackest smoke, tendrils reaching toward Clara and Ben, eager to drag them into the depths. With every pulse of the chamber, Clara felt the evil close in. It tugged at her limbs, whispered doubts into her mind. But she wouldn't let it win. Not now. Stay strong, she shouted, her voice cutting through the murmurs and cries. She took a step forward, pulling Ben along with her. Light flickered with each movement, the carvings on the walls seeming to shift as if eager to witness their struggle. Before them, a massive stone door stood ominously, framed by jagged shapes that looked like gnarled hands gripping the edges. Clara squinted into the dark stone, trying to make out the details. "We need to get through that," she said, pointing. Ben's eyes widened. "What if it's a trap?" "It's a risk we have to take." Clara gritted her teeth, determination solidifying her spine. The laughter echoed again, brewing like a storm in the room, but she pressed on. "We can't let fear keep us from moving forward." As they moved closer, Clara felt a sudden rush of air, like the exhale of something ancient and powerful. She reached for the door, but before her fingers could graze its cool surface, a vision struck her, sharp and brutal. She saw a mother, desperately searching for her lost child in these very woods. Clara felt the phantom agony tugging at her heart. Driven by panic and desperation, the mother's form twisted into a ghastly shadow, forever bound to the site of her grief. "Clara!" Ben's voice, frantic, broke through the vision. "We have to go. It's coming." Forcing herself back to reality, Clara flung the solid door open. A suffocating darkness spilled out from beyond like an ink-black tide, pulling the air from their lungs. Clara's instincts screamed at her to run, but a ferocious need to confront the horror kept her rooted. Barely visible shapes darted through the gloom, flickers of forlorn faces that seemed to reach for their freedom. "Feel the pain of their cries?" Clara yelled to Ben above the deafening roar. "We can't turn our backs now." She felt Ben trembling next to her, and in that moment, the energy changed. The whispers crescendoed, building into a symphony of wailing souls. Clara closed her eyes against the assault, reaching deep inside herself for that spark of defiance, of hope. "We're not here to judge you," she screamed, voicing her conviction. "We're here to free you." With a fierce shout, Clara summoned her strength and stepped inside the suffocating darkness. The moment she crossed the threshold, agony seared through her, 1,000 lost souls pulling at her consciousness. But she held on, focusing on the warmth of Ben's hand clasped in her own. "Clara!" Ben shouted, fear thick in the air around them. I can't breathe. Look within. They need our help." Clara gasped, forcing her voice to stay level. A vision swelled in her mind, a tapestry of loss and sorrow that tailed her thoughts. She knew what needed to be done. Together, they began to tread forward. An unseen force surged against them, claws of despair reaching for their throats, drenching them in darkness. But Clara pressed on, heart racing. "We'll be a light for them," she yelled, focusing on the glow growing within. Suddenly, the room shook violently, the walls closing in, squeezing the air from their lungs. Shadows pulsed like a living beast, hungry for their fears. "Fight it. Don't give in," Clara cried, but then, with a violent lurch, the entire chamber began to tremble. The ground buckled beneath them, and the cries of the lost souls blended into a blood-curdling scream that sent cold shivers down Clara's spine. Just as Clara thought they would be swallowed whole, the light within them burst forth, a vibrant wave of energy surging against the darkness. With one last push, they thrust their hands upward, willing the light to guide the souls back, to break the cycle of pain. The darkness shivered and wailed, swirling furiously around them, as Clara felt a weight lifting. But that was when the laughter returned sharp and clear, echoing above their cries. "Fools! They will never be free. In a blink, the shadows rallied, gathering force, and Clara felt her resolve wobble. Ben, we can't stop. We must. But as she turned to him, the chamber erupted, black walls collapsing, and she lost sight of him in a whirl of shadows. Ben! She cried, fear slicing deep into her heart. With the darkness roaring again, it threatened to consume her. Was she truly alone in this? But then, a flicker of light brought her attention back, leading her eyes to the mural's center, where the faces of the damned twisted in eternal suffering. It pulsed, alive, drawing her closer. What lay beneath those carvings? Clara felt the pull as the darkness roared one final time. Would she grasp the truth before it consumed them both? Time was running out. Clara stood in the swirling void, the darkness pulsating around her like a living thing. The walls creaked menacingly, and anguish seeped from every shadow, threatening to crush her resolve. Ben! She screamed into the abyss, hoping against hope that her voice would somehow reach him, but only silence answered. Heart racing, Clara's eyes darted to the mural that had drawn her in, the faces contorted in pain, as if begging for liberation. Her stomach churned, every face reflected a personal agony, each pleading for acknowledgement. And there, right in the center, the scrawled words leapt out at her. Remember. Clara felt the sensation of fingers, ghostly and cold, brushing against her arm. She flinched, fear quickening her heartbeat. What do you want? She shouted defiantly, but deep down, she knew they were not there to harm her. Again, the shadows rallied, wrapping tighter around her legs. Clara shut her eyes, focusing fiercely. Release them! She cried. You've held them long enough. As if in response, the shadows pulsed and tightened, mocking her pleas. A primal terror clawed at her throat. The laughter echoed again, close, taunting. It was as if the darkness itself reveled in her despair, but within that chaotic storm, a small spark ignited in her heart. She took a step toward the mural, summoning all her courage. I see you. I see your pain. She exclaimed, the words spilling from her lips like a lifeline. Light flickered in the dark chambers of her mind, a beacon piercing through the oppressive gloom. The darkness recoiled as if wounded. The cries of the trapped souls intensified, swelling into an excruciating cacophony. Clara pressed on. Together. She shouted desperately, feeling her own strength rising. We can break the chains. With each step toward the mural, the room began to tremble. Clara held her breath, an electrifying energy swirling through her veins. The faces on the mural seemed to shift, coming to life, their mouths forming silent screams. As she stretched out her hands, she felt a tugging sensation, a connection pulsing deeply within the center of her being. Clara, a whisper floated through the storm of shadows, a voice she recognized. Find the truth before it consumes you. Ben. She gasped, the realization crashing against her. He was still there, somewhere. The shadows wove tighter about her, but she couldn't let them pull her under. Not now. I will find you. She yelled, injecting fierce determination into her voice, anchoring her spirit against the overwhelming fear. With renewed energy, she pressed her hands onto the mural's surface. It was cold and rough beneath her fingers, but she could feel heat start to radiate from it, spreading through her palms. A blinding light erupted, swirling around her, cutting the shadows like a knife. The cries turned to wails of relief as the faces began to dissolve, drifting free of their torment, but just as the brightness began to expand, Clara felt a violent tug at her waist. A dark tendril latched onto her, pulling her back with terrifying force. No! She screamed, fighting against it with every ounce of strength she had. I want to let you take me. The force holding her slipped, but not entirely. As the light grew, so did her resolve. Suddenly, the laughter returned, sickeningly strong, echoing with an ancillary malevolence that chilled her blood. You think you can escape? It was close, almost intimate now, fueling her desperation. That in a breathless moment, she realized the truth she needed to find. This darkness wanted her to fail. It thrived on the fear of loss, of hopelessness. Ben! She howled one last time, her body shaking as another shadow gripped her ankle. I won't give up on you. Then, as if in answer, a blinding surge of light erupted from the mural, and Clara felt herself being pulled toward it. The connection was undeniable. It linked her to the scattered pieces of lost souls, to Ben, and to the very essence of truth. As the shadows screeched in fury, Clara leaped into the light, feeling her body shred apart only to be woven anew by the luminous energy, what awaited her on the other side, as the darkness clawed behind her, and the echo of laughter folded into a spine-chilling silence. Would she find Ben? Or had the darkness consumed him forever? The answer lay tantalizingly close, just beyond the blinding light. Clara's heart raced as she burst through the blinding light, feeling a surge of warmth wash over her. Time and space coalesced into a single moment of clarity, and just like that, she was thrust into a vast, open field under a serene sky, bathed in soft golden hues. She gasped, disbelief curling in her throat. Ben! She called, frantically sweeping her gaze across the tranquil landscape. But the joy of the moment felt hollow until she felt a small hand slip into hers. Mommy! Ben exclaimed, looking up with wide, innocent eyes that sparkled with life. Tears filled Clara's eyes as she enveloped him in a protective embrace, the chilling darkness still echoing in the corners of her mind. I thought I lost you. She cried, squeezing him tightly, as if afraid he might slip from her grasp once more. No, I was right here. I was waiting, Ben replied, his voice steady, his small fingers warm against her skin. The relief that flooded Clara made her knees buckle. They were free. The weight of despair that had clung to her, the memories of the malevolent watcher and the sinister whispers, seemed to dissipate into the gentle breeze. She looked around, realizing they were no longer in the shadowy woods but in a beautiful realm where laughter echoed and sunlight poured like liquid gold, but then a shiver ran down her spine as she remembered the horror of their past. Is it truly over? She whispered, fear tracing her voice. Yes, Mommy, Ben assured her, his face glowing with determination. We faced the shadows, and they can't reach us here. We are safe. Together. Just behind them, the path they had traversed through darkness began to glow, revealing its winding trail behind them, littered with shades of the past. The wall of shadows that once loomed so close was now an indistinct haze, pushed back by the light they had summoned. Clara understood then that they had not just escaped, they had confronted their darkest fears and emerged not unscathed, but hold that I in this new reality. A soft laughter carried through the air, and others began to appear. Children, once past victims of the woods, emerged with smiles bright enough to light the gloom they had left behind. Clara recognized some faces, the very same ones that had haunted her in her nightmares, mouths forever open in silent screams. But now, those faces beamed with life, freed from the binds that had once entrapped them. Clara. Ben. A familiar voice called, drawing Clara's gaze. It was the ghost of her grandmother, smiling warmly, arms wide open, as if welcoming them home. Grandma. Clara rushed forward, absorbing every ounce of warmth and love that radiated from her. They had faced their darkness, together, and here lay the promise of peace. Thank you for saving them, her grandmother said softly, brushing a hand against Clara's cheek, a gesture both calming and reinforcing. You embraced the light when you could have easily succumbed to the darkness. Recognition filled Clara's heart as she understood. They had to remember that love and bravery had triumphed, not only for themselves but for all the souls bound by shadows. Ben jumped in excitement into her arms, joy radiating off his cheeks. Mommy, can we play now? Clara chuckled, her heart light again. Yes, we can play forever, she promised, a newfound strength coursing through her. And so they ran through the open fields, laughter soaring into the sky, mingling with the laughter of other children now dancing around them, liberated from their past miseries. They were alive, truly alive, unburdened by the weight of shadows, vibrant with the knowledge that light would always return, so long as they believed in each other. As the scene unfolded around them, Clara turned, the vision of the shadowy woods fading into a distant memory, knowing they would never return there again. They were free, and with that freedom, love and joy expanded beyond anything Clara could have ever imagined. That in this new world, fear was but a fleeting impression, every shadow cast would always be chased away by the light of love. As the sun dipped below the horizon golden, warmth lingering in its wake, Clara whispered to the evening breeze, "We are home." Thank you for following their journey. If you loved this story and want more spine-chilling tales, you need to subscribe now to stay updated. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Don't just sit back, flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about what lies ahead, and please, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic conclusion. Let us keep the tales alive together.